We want to make Sokuzan's teachings available to all who would benefit from hearing the Dharma from his perspective. You may relate to this if you are returning to these talks time and again and find value in them. Consider supporting us financially and participating with questions during Dharma talks and at book studies. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome to SokukoJi on this last day of the year. My name is Myoka and I will be talking about the four karmas this evening in a Dharma talk. Sokuzan has asked me to speak on these. Sokuzan is joining us, I think you may see online. He had a procedure today and is not able to join us in the Zendo, but he is here with us as always. The four karmas. This is something I haven't looked a lot at, although as I endeavored to look at it tonight or this afternoon, I realized that we're always looking at the four karmas. One way they're described is, or karma is described as action, but I also read that any movement that we're looking at either in our daily life or sitting on the cushion, this all involves karma. And these karmas, pacifying, enriching, magnetizing, and destroying, and there are other words used for those in different teachers' teachings on them. Mainly what I found when I researched it was this way of structuring karma seems to come from the Tibetan tradition, but I don't know that for sure. That's just what seemed to pop up as I was looking for information online. And there are also other ways to break down karma. Another one I encountered that we talk about sometimes is past karma, current karma, and future karma. But I am going to see if we wander into that area or the main area I had looked at was, again, the pacifying, enriching, magnetizing, and destroying. And these are words Sokuzan used. And when he asked me to do the talk, I asked him if this was what he was referring to when he asked me to do a talk on the four karmas, and he indicated yes. So I took a few notes, but again, as I was reading information, it seems like we encounter a lot of this way of working with the teachings of karma in our lives. And we'll see as we look into this tonight. We encounter action arising out of suffering that is dependently arisen. Pacifying. Another way of saying it is quieting, calming, doing nothing, peace. And all that sounds quite pleasant, but I also encountered the most helpful writing I found was from something Judy Leaf had written famous student of Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, who has done a lot of research and editing of his materials and worked for him as a writer and editor. So if anything of hers, if any of you are familiar with her teaching, some of this may that I seem to relate to came from what I read from her on this area of the four karmas. And so again, pacifying, quieting, finding peace. This type of karma also can have a very seductive quality, and this is something Judy had talked about. There's a quality of peace in that pacifying that can seduce us into, or we can be seduced in our spiritual practice to want to, I think Sokuzan sometimes talks about it as wanting to return to a particular state, perhaps a peaceful or calm or generally type of pleasant, pacified state. The next one is enriching. And the word that I found most useful in understanding this concept of karma as enriching was growth. And growth in that we come, we practice, we sit, we look at our mind, we train our mind and endeavor to see things with awareness. In that kind of the way I would say it, I guess, is organically, we're not endeavoring to grow or improve, but yet there is some kind of enriching or growth that seems to happen. And some of that may come out of, or it all comes out of suffering or looking at pain and suffering and difficulty and continuing to return to our practice. So enriching to me represents that we are enriched by the practice in ways perhaps we don't know or can't see, and we can't, in a way that we can't endeavor or we can't come up with a formula to do. It's a different kind of growth than you might encounter in academics or in training yourself to chop wood or fix a car or anything like that. The next one is magnetizing. And magnetizing to me, magnetizing karma looks like things we're drawn to. That word seems to show up for me, drawn, although I don't think I read that. Attraction is a word I did see, where we're attracted to knowledge, we're attracted to information, but we're also magnetized or attracted to, or sometimes we use the word resonate with a particular teacher, a particular dharma, a particular practice, or a structure that may help us or point towards the dharma in a way that magnetizes us. And I think with all of these pacifying, enriching, and magnetizing, when I first started to look at them, it seemed like there was a lot of overlap, or I didn't know, and it's still hard to distinguish, where one of those might stop and another ends. Because again, it seems like we are looking at this kind of action all of the time. And those first three are sometimes, or I think Judy brought it up in her teaching about how those three can be considered compassionate actions or can be worked with in a way that compassion arises in that. And also on the difficult side of that, we can get trapped into what they call in the Tibetan tradition is, oh no, I can't think of it. The idiot compassion, where we are trying to be a helper person and can take any of these into the area of where we're formulating a way to be more compassionate. And then in the last one, destroying. For me, that's the easiest one to see. At least at this point, where we're cutting off activity or not doing some, or just, destroying a connection with somebody, or deliberately perhaps turning away from something that doesn't seem useful, or yeah, I guess it shows up a lot as ignorance, where we don't want to look at it. So we just immediately turn away from it and destroy our connection to it. Or apparently we do that. I think oftentimes if I'm destroying some connection with something I don't like, it ends up coming back anyway. But sometimes we need destruction, and it can also be helpful in that we may need to cut a connection with something in order to turn our attention or awareness to something else. Not that we may not, or we give up that, like that could still come back and be a part of what we're working with. But sometimes it may be useful or helpful or another way of working with whatever is showing up. And with all of these pacifying, enriching, magnetizing, and destroying, all of these kinds of karma arise out of dependent origination. So it's an energy, although there's action involved in any of them, there may be a person doing that or a situation producing that, but it's taught that that is all dependently arisen. In the same way, the three poisons seem to be prevalent. The karma in the action arises out of suffering, and the suffering involves passion, aggression, and ignorance. So I think in any of these karmas, those are playing out one way or another, but also not necessarily. Things can be pacifying, enriching, magnetizing, and be destroying without us doing any of that. In fact, the illusion of all of it is just happening without, we're taught, without a self or anybody involved in the karma itself as it arises. So any situation presents in front of us could show up in any of these types of karma, and it's kind of just a framework of looking at them. And there's definitely seems to be some overlap between them. And you may or may not find that useful, or this structure useful to work with. But in my brief exploration of these four karmas, I think it's been helpful to see that even though I hadn't had that framework previously, or at least it hasn't been something I've delved into, it seems helpful to me to help me see more about what is happening in terms of karma on a day-to-day or moment-by-moment basis. I think I can take some questions if anybody has any. Erlam.
Arlong bowing. Excuse me. Um, are the four karmas taught as a kind of like antidote for a particular situation, like things that you would apply to a situation, bowing?
I think they can be looked at that way. I think when I was trying to understand enriching and how growth happens on the spiritual path, that kind of took me into how, because I think I came into it or I had an understanding that they were used in that way to pacify or enrich, and I think in difficult situations, sometimes I know Sokuzan has talked about if you're in a difficult situation, limit your time with a person, and cut your time off, and talked about that as kind of destroying that connection. But I think that would come out of a situation rather than being some kind of protocol where we can practice enriching a situation or magnetizing or destroying something. They are taught in a sometimes, and they're usually presented in that order. So sometimes some of the teachers talk about going from pacifying to enriching to magnetizing to destroying in that order. But it also seems like that's not necessarily the case. Like it can also be talked about how situations arise using any of them, and it's dependent origination that is showing up, and it can show up in any of those ways. So there's really not always something you could necessarily, or if you do something in a way that looks like one of those, like magnetizing, that seems to be something that would just arise out of causes and conditions rather than something that you're applying. But yeah, you could also apply that, or it may just show up that that's what you need to do next. Any questions on Zoom? Yudao?
Do you have any examples in your life or practice of using like enriching and magnetizing bowing?
Those are the two that I had to look at more closely to see what the difference was, because there seems like can be a lot of similarity. And the two words I came up with were, for enrichment was growth, and for magnetizing was being drawn to something. And often hear Sokuzan use the word magnetize. We're magnetized by something. And I think this is that karma that magnetizes. We're magnetized to our teacher, Sokuzan, and his teachings. This is a kind of karma that we're presented with. And then enriching, at least in my limited research of it and understanding tonight, seems a lot like it's about growth and how a practice grows. You know, we enrich soil so that plants grow, as you know, as a gardener. Yeah, that seems the most helpful. Did you have something further on that?
Yudawang, I was just wondering if you've ever used these in a situation, a difficult situation with someone, as an approach to working with that person, bowing.
Yes, and it's difficult because you may think you know or seem to know something that might magnetize somebody, but it may end up enriching them, or it may, whatever you, it's like I don't think about maybe magnetizing, but if I hear somebody speaking, for instance, if I was talking to you and we were talking about gardening, I know you like gardening. So that's something that both of us might be magnetized to. If someone, in terms of enrichment, if somebody is interested in Chinese, or sometimes Sokuzan recently has been interested in the Marshallese language, which I lived there and was a Peace Corps volunteer there and was married to a woman from the Marshall Islands, so I'm quite fluent in that language. So there's a kind of enriching that goes on when somebody has a curiosity about perhaps something I have a little background in, or vice versa. I may be enriched by asking questions to someone who has knowledge of something that I'm magnetized by, but also would like to find out more about. And I think that's the way those two can work together. It seems there's curiosity involved, and so we're magnetized. And then if we want to know more or want to spend time with somebody who may offer us some kind of way that we may learn more about it or practice something like gardening so that we could learn it better. It seems to be talked about in a way that those could come about organically. I mean, you can also deliberately try to magnetize or try to learn something, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just it's easy to get caught in that, where you could want to develop a particular skill, and then you get really good at it, and then you just spend all your time doing it, and you may be missing out on your life because that's all you do, or that may show up as your life. It's very difficult, I think, to know, but it's a way of looking at our activity or our actions in terms of these energies and their movement.
Thank you.
Jishin?
Jishin Bowing. When I was listening to your explanation to Yudel now, I'm wondering if enriching can be used in practicing 3 Cs, which Sokuzan encouraging us to, when we are in the contact with someone, to ask the question like, tell me more about it, which when you're explaining enriching, you were talking about awareness, see things with awareness. So I'm wondering whether this can be like a opening towards being aware of what the person can tell us more about himself, herself, or situation in general. Bowing.
Yes, definitely. I hadn't thought of that, but yes, it seems like the three C's, communication, cooperation, and collaboration, do seem like a way that we could bring more enrichment to Sangha, to teaching, to questions. And that reminded me too that it's enriching is also talked about is in offering, like if we offer incense or if we offer prayers, the Maitri Bhavana Sutra, wishing people well. This is also all talked about as enrichment. And I thought a little bit about how the vow to be with all things and to save all beings also seems like enrichment. It seems to work with that in my beginning understanding of these four karmas.
Jishin Bowing, thank you. I'm wondering what is enriched in those situations. Bowing.
I think the way it's talked about in spiritual enrichment, there's no result. I mean, we may see something that looks like a result that's enriched in some way, but I feel like if enrichment is happening, it's like growth where it just keeps growing. There's no stopping or no point. You might come up with something like you find out you're sitting longer, or your relationship with someone close has improved. So this could be considered enriching, but sometimes it feels like if that's happening, there's no way to nail down when that occurred.
Jishin Bowing, maybe I'm going too far, but when I'm thinking about enriching in this kind of open situation, how is the what is awareness or consciousness in that situation when when there is that opening? Is there more than just the players of the situation, like two people or more involved, are enriched, or the situation itself is does this enrichment also lead to some enrichment of the consciousness? Can it? Bowing.
It might lead to less. I think it'd be really hard to know, or, consciousness. I don't think it would be, I don't know, I'm not sure, but I don't think it would be concerned so much perhaps with who or what or where or how much it's enriched. I think the enrichment, it is talked about as wealth or, an accumulation. If I was going to accumulate anything in that area, I would hope it would be merit. Merit is also brought up in that area. Like the dedication of merit that we do also seems like enrichment, but there's no, as Sokuzan says, we intend to do that, but there's no result. There's no, if we find a result of enrichment, then we're right back to, studying biology or anything we can accumulate, in terms of knowledge. So I think finding reference points in whatever, even if it's enrichment or wealth or magnetizing or any of these, I think it's just something to help us look, but there's nothing to be gained or lost.
Thank you. Just one quick question to clarify my last one. I was thinking more about when we are receiving and we don't even know whether we received or not, which can happen with the enrichment, seems to me. Is there anything then enriched if we don't know whether it was enriched or not? Bowing.
It's hard because enrichment in that case of receiving also sometimes, I was thinking of it also in terms of pacifying, where you're just there listening, and that could pacify, it could enrich, it could magnetize, it could destroy. So anything that it looks like we're doing or clarifying or discriminating in that way, it seems helpful to not know what it is that's enriched, perhaps, or not be focused in that area necessarily, and rather just pay attention to or turn our awareness towards whatever is happening. Anytime I conclude that I'm growing or enriching or get magnetized by something, and if I conclude that, then I think I'm already turning away from what else I can see in front of me. And that's just, I guess, the trap of the concepts. It's helpful to use them, but at some point, it seems more organic than that. Karma happens. There's an action that arises. If we're doing something with it, then that's, we are participating in that karma. But we could also just look and watch that happen, and the situation would show up where we decide to magnetize or enrich or pacify, but we don't necessarily need to see or know that we're doing that. It seems like it would just arise.
May I ask a question? This is SokukoJi.
Yes, please go ahead, Sokuzan.
So pacifying, enriching, magnetizing, and destroying take on many, many forms as we approach others, as we approach our life, as we approach our own mind, and the teachings themselves. And so, based on your understanding and your perception of these four karmas, when it comes to the teacher and the student situation, when the teacher is endeavoring to help, you could say, instruct a student whom he has or she has gotten permission from to teach, when that teacher uses one of those four karmas to pacify, enrich, magnetize, or destroy. Can you talk a little bit about maybe some different ways this could show up, since you've been a student for quite a while and you're endeavoring to train as a teacher? You must have contemplated this a little bit. Pardon me for the long question. I'm not trying to compete with anyone here, but I would like you to say something about your understanding of those four and how the teaching person uses that, and how the student person may be able to receive that if they've given permission to the teacher, and how they may misinterpret it and shut down, run away, change, or conclude things that are not actually being taught. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for that question, Sokuzan. Yes, I have definitely looked at that. In terms of pacifying, I have seen the teacher pacify, and I think especially immediately when it first happens, I feel like I'm being ignored. I can't think of a specific situation, but I can especially remember early on feeling that way, like I'm being ignored. So I can see pacifying from the teacher show up that way, but I didn't feel like the teacher was intentionally like ignoring me. I mean, yes, that's what came to my mind, but the longer or the more times that I've seen that happen, it seems like it's more the pacifying situation that's happening. And it seems to be done in a way or happen in a way that I think you've talked about how you don't know what you're going to do next. You don't know what you're going to say in a Dharma talk. I think these show up for the teacher. It must be out of dependent origination the same way, kind of organically, depending on the student, depending on, so many limitless, unlimited factors. In terms of enrichment, the main thing that seems to enrich my practice from the teacher is when you say, keep going, return, 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 keep going. That's the only way we're going to be enriched by the practice is if we keep coming back. If we leave the practice, if we turn away, we sever our ties, we destroy our tie with the teacher, then there's no how would there be enrichment? Or the enrichment will take a completely different direction into whatever's next for that student. Magnetizing, I feel like the teacher may see something show up somehow. I don't know if it's come directly from the teacher, but I have been very magnetized by Ikebana and the flower arranging and that creativity that seems to show up in that practice. And I have been encouraged by the teacher to do that. But there could be in a practice like that where maybe the arrangement isn't exactly up to form, or there's some kind of discrimination I have about how that's showing up, whether it's appreciated or that kind of thing, where it's like the magnetizing is that I want the magnetizing, or I want somebody to be attracted to that, or
So may I ask a little bit further on that?
sure, please.
So of the four karmas this evening, rather abruptly and sooner than you may have wanted, I asked you to give a talk on this topic, which is not particularly an easy topic. Which one of the four karmas is showing up in your understanding when I say, Myoka, will you give the Dharma talk tonight? Please talk about the four karmas. Is it just one of them? If so, which one?
I think it's all of them, but initially it shows up as, because I wasn't familiar with the topic, as a kind of ignorance. But that ignorance seems like it can take a form of pacifying, because I could have, you offered me the opportunity to pick a different topic or to turn away from this topic. And I could have pacified some of my pain or suffering around doing it by choosing that. In enrichment, I could have turned to a topic I might be more familiar with but I would have lost some of the enrichment that I feel I have experience in just looking at these very briefly and quickly without having known. It feels like there was I might have missed an opportunity for some kind of enrichment.
So how did magnetizing show up from this person to you?
Well, I'm magnetized by you, and I feel when you ask me to speak on a particular subject, I am magnetized by that. I perhaps it's ego. I'm sure ego's involved that I want to do what my teacher's asking me to do.
So how did destroying show up? Have to be a little bit imaginative here to
Well,
approach this.
it came and went off and on. Like I wanted to give up, and then I read a little more, and then I got magnetized in, but then something might come up and I'd be like, no, 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 I don't understand. Or I can't do that, so that I
So
want to
perhaps,
destroy
so
that.
perhaps, if I may offer, so perhaps what got destroyed is your plans for this evening that we're going to be watching Netflix.
Yes, I got off work early, so I had more time this evening. And yeah, I'm sure I would have found some entertainment.
Well, I guess I helped you put an end to that, didn't I? So I guess what I'm trying to suggest here is just so many ways we could all come together and just come up with all the different ways. There's just countless ways that pacifying, enriching, magnetizing, and destroying can show up in terms of your own functionality and of the relationship between the teacher and the student. So thank you so much, sir. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Yes, and I think in the beginning of this talk, I was talking about how it just kept looking like I've been looking at these without knowing that I was looking at them. So once I got a little bit of a reference point on what these concepts are, it seemed like there were so many things I could apply. And I even thought, well, I could probably do a second talk on these. And whether you enrich me in that area or pacify or destroy me or magnetize me, we'll see. Are there any further questions this evening?
Androma bowing. There is someone at the front door,
Oh, thank you.
and then I can also ask a question. So I'm thinking of if you are in conflict with someone, or if you can tell someone is in conflict with you, is having trouble with you, how could you react, or how could you choose to respond in that situation using this, the four karmas, bowing?
I think the easiest one to start with is the pacifying or receiving, listening, doing nothing. Although that may show up to somebody as one of the other karmas, but the adage, hold your horses, and some of Sokuzan's rules like 90-10 or don't do anything unless you have to, it seems you could, in a conflict, hold back. And I'm thinking of a conflict in terms of emotion or communication. If somebody's physically coming at you, then you may have to do more than that, to protect yourself. But in terms of just relationships that with people that are close to you and there's conflict, or somebody on the street, there could be a miscommunication happening. And so you wouldn't know which karma necessarily to use in any specific situation, though I think a lot of situations call for at least an initial pacifying, not doing a lot unless there is, yeah, some kind of threat or danger that is physically.
Andrew bowing. I'm thinking of if someone's coming towards you, and for example, you want to use the passive approach. What would that look like? Bowing.
Silence is one way. I mean, there's countless ways, but I think silence and receiving that person and receiving, everything from your senses, receiving their body and if there's communication if there's talking happening, notice, are they loud? Are they soft? How fast are they speaking? There's so many things we can give our attention to or our awareness to. I mean,
Andrew bowing, and so that's going to work.
Okay, go ahead.
Sorry. What I was curious about is a very specific example. So the same thing with maybe one other karma, like magnetizing. If someone is coming towards you and is upset with you or disagrees with you, how could you, what's an example of magnetizing in that situation? Bowing.
Say the person is interested in cars and you notice, a really nice sports car or something that fits what they're interested in happens to come by, or if there's a particular topic, that magnetizes them, something like that could show up. If they're interested in nature, there's clothing, there could be so many things. You could say, hey, just wait a minute, did you notice that, plane going over or hot air balloon, or wow, look at the shape of that cloud. If you know something about them that would magnetize them, it's probably going to be harder with somebody that you don't know. Although there could be, you never know what could show up, where there may be something in that situation that's magnetizing to you, and you could show that you're magnetized by something and see if that magnetizes them.
Andrew bowing, thank you. And then one more question. What is going on inside of you? If someone's approaching you with definitely having a problem with whatever you're saying or doing, and you either choose passivity or magnetizing, what do you do with what's going on for you, bowing?
I hope I can bring awareness to, first thing that comes to mind in a heated situation is my breathing. I think if I give attention to whether I'm tight in my breathing or rapid or my heartbeat, maybe sweaty palms, bodily things seem to be a good area to bring my awareness to in that situation, or to at least include with whatever's happening. How I'm standing, sitting, the space around, is it an open area, is it closed? All those kind of environmental things. And I think, that by sitting and meditating, you practice giving attention to those and bringing awareness to that and to the space. So I think that it may not solve or give you any path out or away from that conflict or be able to be skillful, but I think it could be helpful to pay attention to your body, pay attention to the space, pay attention to the other people there and their the sounds and anything that's showing up.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think I'll take one more question and then we'll close for the evening. If there is one. Orlam.
Bowing. I'm curious about how this teaching or what it's pointing to if we're not like applying the four karmas, like if it's just looking at the energies of what's helpful about looking at them split up in those four different ways. Bowing.
I think it could be helpful to show us some other attributes we may be missing in the situation. If we're in a situation where we're uncertain, we may need to be uncertain, but at the same time, whatever's coming up or whatever's showing up in the awareness could offer something in terms of these four karmas, and help us to see more clearly what's happening in the confusion that seems to be arising. Because I think a lot of these are, and I think I said earlier, they come out of the suffering and then we apply, we're acting out or might react out of the three poisons. But if we can also perhaps see how we're magnetized by something or enriched by something, pacified, or just something needs to be destroyed or ended, then it seems that in any situation, there's so many of those, probably all of them happening, and that one might become more apparent than another and offer something that we missed. Okay, we can close. Thank you for your questions this evening. We will stand and dedicate the merit.